As the sun set on a summer evening in upstate New York, an eerie silence fell over Clinton Correctional Facility. A maximum security prison nestled in the small town of Dannemora was known for housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the state. But on this night, something was different. The guards patrolling the prison walls had no idea that two of their most notorious inmates were plotting their escape. Richard Matt and David Sweat, both serving life sentences for murder, had been digging their way out of their cells for months. And as the darkness descended upon the prison, they were ready to make their move. Richard Matt was a career criminal who had spent most of his adult life in and out of prison. He was born in Tonawanda, New York in 1966 and had a troubled childhood. He turned to a life of crime at an early age, and by the time he was in his 20s, he had been convicted of several crimes, including kidnapping, assault, and robbery. In 1997, Matt was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the kidnapping and murder of a businessman. He was transferred to the Clinton Correctional Facility in 2008, where he was serving a sentence. David Sweat, on the other hand, was a convicted killer who was serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He was sentenced to life in prison in 2003 for the murder of a sheriff's deputy. The escape of Richard Matt and David Sweat from the Clinton Correctional Facility in 2015 was a carefully planned and executed effort that lasted several months. In planning their escape, Richard Matt and David Sweat considered several factors, including the prison's layout, the location of the guards, and the routines of the prison staff. They had studied the prison's security measures and were aware of its weaknesses, which they exploited to their advantage. The two convicts worked on their escape at night, when the prison was quieter and less active. They used soundproof walls and coverings to muffle the noise of their drilling and sawing. They also had to be careful to avoid detection by the guards and cameras, which required precise timing and coordination. Their first step was to gain access to the prison's maintenance tunnels, which they accomplished by cutting through their cell walls with power tools. Once they were in the tunnels, they made their way through the maze of pipes and vents until they reached a manhole that led to the outside of the prison walls. To get through the manhole, Matt and Sweat used hacksaws and other cutting tools to break through the metal grates that covered it. They then crawled through the small opening and emerged outside the prison walls. From there, the two inmates made their way to a nearby train station, where they had stashed a car that they had stolen from a prison employee. They then drove the car to a nearby town where they split up and went their separate ways. The escape was discovered on the morning of June 6, 2015, when prison guards did a head count of all the inmates during the morning roll call. When they got to the cells of Richard Matt and David Sweat, they found that they were empty. At first, the guards assumed that the two men might have been transferred to another facility, or that they were in the infirmary. But a further investigation revealed that they were nowhere to be found. A search of the prison grounds was immediately initiated, and it was soon discovered that the two men had cut their way through the back of their cells and into a series of tunnels and pipes that led to a manhole outside the prison walls. The manhole cover had been lifted, indicating that they had escaped through it. It quickly became clear that the two men had planned their escape meticulously and had taken great care to cover their tracks. However, they made one critical error. They failed to cover up the manhole after they had emerged from it, which made it easy for authorities to discover how they had escaped. After their escape, Richard Matt and David Sweat left a sarcastic note for the prison guards that included a happy face and read, "Have a nice day." The note was found near the pipe that the two men had used to break out of the prison, and it added insult to injury for the prison staff who were already reeling from the audacious escape. The note hinted at the brazen confidence of the escapees and the extent of the planning that went into their escape. The discovery of the empty cells and the manhole led to a massive manhunt that lasted for 3 weeks and involved hundreds of law enforcement officers from multiple agencies, including the New York State Police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the U.S. Marshal Service. Helicopters and canine units were used. The search covered a large area of upstate New York and parts of Vermont and Canada. The authorities also offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the capture of the fugitives. After the escape, Richard Matt and David Sweat spent several weeks in the surrounding areas of the prison, attempting to evade the authorities. They stole food, clothing, and camping gear from local hunting cabins and continued their journey deeper into the wilderness. At one point, they were spotted by a passing motorist, but the witness did not recognize the escapees and did not report the sighting until days later. Matt and Sweat also broke into a number of vacation homes and seasonal camps, stealing supplies and leaving behind clues to their whereabouts. Despite the extensive manhunt that was underway, the two men managed to elude the authorities for over 3 weeks, traveling almost 25 miles through the dense Adirondack forest. They made their way to a remote area near the Canadian border, where they were eventually tracked down by a team of U.S. Marshals. The men were located in a makeshift campsite, surrounded by discarded food wrappers and other evidence that they had been living in the area. The manhunt came to an end on June 26, when a U.S. Customs and Border Protection tactical team spotted Richard Matt in the woods near the Canadian border. He was shot and killed by a U.S. Border Patrol agent after he refused to surrender. David Sweat was captured 2 days later near the town of Constable, New York, after being spotted by a New York State trooper. He was shot and captured after he refused to surrender and fled from the trooper. The investigation into the prison break revealed a shocking level of complicity and corruption within the Clinton Correctional Facility. It was discovered that the two men had received assistance from a prison employee named Joyce Mitchell, who had agreed to be their getaway driver after their escape. Mitchell, who was a supervisor in the prison's tailor shop, had become close to the two men and had helped them obtain tools and other materials that they used in their escape. She later changed her mind about being their getaway driver and failed to show up at the agreed-upon location. Mitchell was charged with facilitating the escape and was sentenced to up to 7 years in prison. The investigation also revealed that the two men had used power tools to cut through the walls of their cells and the pipes in the tunnels. The tools were believed to have been supplied by Mitchell and another prison employee named Gene Palmer. Palmer, who was a corrections officer, had been suspended and later resigned from his job. He was charged with promoting prison contraband and tampering with physical evidence. The New York prison escape of Richard Matt and David Sweat was a major embarrassment for the state and sparked calls for reform and improvements in the state's prison system. The incident highlighted the need for increased security measures and better employee screening procedures, as well as the need for better training and support for prison staff. After the escape of Richard Matt and David Sweat, the Clinton Correctional Facility made several security adjustments, including installing new cameras and creating an escape-proof cell block. They also hired additional staff, including guards and security personnel, to increase security presence. These measures were implemented to prevent future escapes and ensure the safety of everyone within the prison. In conclusion, the New York prison escape of Richard Matt and David Sweat was a major event that captured the nation's attention and raised serious questions about the security and management of the state's prisons. The escape was the result of a combination of factors, including a lack of proper security measures, corruption and complicity among the prison employees, and the cunning and determination of the two convicted murderers. The manhunt that followed was a testament to the dedication and determination of law enforcement officers from multiple agencies who worked tirelessly to bring the fugitives to justice.